It's your boy Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show. You know, there are people out there who say, I want to be rich. You've heard the song, I want to be rich. People say they want to be a millionaire. Those are really good dreams. But if you want to turn your dreams into reality, you cannot be addicted to sleeping. You cannot be a friend of procrastination. And your friends better not be people who don't know millionaires and know how to make you a millionaire. Well, because we really like improving the lifestyles and lives of our audience, we are proud to present to you today Mr. Bronson Hill. This man knows how to get it done. He can put some chips in your pocket, but before he can do that, you got to open up your ears and listen to what he has to say. Mr. Bronson Hill, thank you so much for being on the show. But before we get started, I just want to give people as I always call it, a voir dire of the gentleman before you. As the managing member of Bronson Equity, that's at www.bronsonequity.com. Bronson is a general partner in a 2,500 multifamily units worth over $250 million. That's a billion. Bronson is the host of the Mailbox Money Show, where he breaks down the investor mindset and has personally raised over $45 million for real estate and his private equity deals. Bronson is the author of the best-selling book, Fire Yourself, Replace Your Working Income with Passive Income in 3 years or less, and is a regular contributor to YouTube and his blog. Bronson is a regular keynote speaker and leads the Wealth Forum as an exclusive mastermind for affluent passive investors, providing unmatched investment opportunities within a growth-oriented community. Bronson is a frequent guest on podcasts like The Best Ever Show with Joe Fairless and was a speaker at the large Limitless Conference with Ken McElroy. These are accomplishments that anybody could be proud of.
Awesome. Great to be here, brother. Excited to chat. I think it's so important. I love what you shared. I mean, a lot of people, there's no plan, for becoming wealthy, right? It's either you win the lottery or their rich uncle dies, right? And this is most people's plan, but there is a way. And I think this is something I want to say that for most people, they really believe that you're either born with money or you're not, right? You either have it or you don't. Either, you become a pro athlete, you get in the lottery, or it's in your family, maybe you're a trust fund person, which that does happen. But Fidelity Investments had a study in 2019 that found that 86% of millionaires are self-made. 86%, almost 9 out of 10. So that means that these are learnable, teachable things that we can learn. And so the people that become wealthy, it's because they chose to, they learned to, and they took actions consistently to be that way.
And when you say passive income, can you take a regular person and take them to passive income in 3 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting that about passive income is that a lot of people talk about passive income and they say, "Hey, I'm going to get some passive income," and they start to you make some money in their job. They start to do well. We work with a lot of people that are professionals or they're business owners, and they say, "I'm going to actually go from making money to actually start putting into something else." So often, what people do is they'll buy a single family house. They'll do an online trading thing. They'll trade stocks and options and things, or they'll buy a business. But people talk about these as passive income, but they're really not passive. I mean, I owned several rental houses at one point, three or four, and it would just became a lot more work. And so the idea of passive income, really the test is, Warren Buffett has this quote. He says, "Unless you learn how to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die." Now, Warren Buffett is 94 years old and he's just announced he's about to retire. So he kind of is doing a little bit different, but having the option, right? My book, Fire Yourself, the book behind me here is Replace Your Working Income with Passive Income in 3 years or less. You may say, "Hey, I love my job," or "Hey, I love my business." Well, what happens? The question I would ask you is, well, what happens if, God forbid, you become disabled or a family member has a crisis and you have to be there? A lot of us, we have to go to work, and over 50% of Americans are paycheck to paycheck. So if you're listening, you're like, "Hey, that's not really on my radar. I'm just trying to survive." Well, there's a big difference between surviving and thriving. And the passive income conversation is taking some money, saving some money, putting it into something that actually does that. It makes money while you sleep, right? So you're not the one who's pulling the levers. You're not the one that you can do the other way where you're actually actively doing it and you're managing something and that's great. I've done that. I do that, right? But I also passively invest where I take funds that I have and I put them into deals and then the money itself grows, right? So my money itself is actually, it becomes like a part-time employee for me to go work and make more money for me, right? So that's really what passive income is about. But I think it's something anybody can do. It can start with just a small amount and it can grow over time.
Wow. I like the way you said that. I mean, even there, you have my mind totally turned around. When you said you make your money go to work for you, I have a vision of Benjamin Franklin putting on his shoes and going out the door to go bring me back some more Benjamins.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Well, it's exactly what it is. It's just, again, it's a different mindset because for most people, like if you want to do what wealthy, if you want to become wealthy, you've got to do what wealthy people do. And there are things that like most people do is they spend as everything they make, they spend, or with credit card, they spend more than what they make, right? So if you do that, there's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it talks about this. Like if you're like miserable as the person who makes, 10 pence, but then spends 11 pence, right? But happy is the one who makes 10 pence and spends nine, right? Because then you can save. So some of these are very basic things, as far as just spending and saving. So I look at it like 101 is kind of the Dave Ramsey, don't go into debt, make sure you're within your budget, that kind of thing. Once you get that, and once you start developing some resources, then it's important to start saying, okay, well, how can I grow? What are the ways that people do grow passive income? What are the ways people invest in businesses? And when I talk about passive income, it's really the test is if I'm buying houses or if I'm doing options trading or strategy, like if it takes my time, if I can't 10x what I'm doing immediately. So at one point I had four rental houses and I wasn't the manager, but I was still getting calls every week. And hey, what do we do here? If I couldn't very quickly go 10x and go to 40 of them, meaning acquiring, managing them, and all that, and that of course is just overwhelming. And so if you can't do that without creating yourself another job, then it's not actually passive investing, right? So passive investing is I do the work on the front end where I vet a team, I vet a deal. I think, how does this look? Does this fit kind of with what my goals are and who they are? And then when I'm ready, I actually invest the money, I send it over, and then I'm out. I don't do the work, right? I just receive, but the name of my podcast is called the Mailbox Money Show, right? So how do I start getting, it should be called the Direct Deposit Show because most people send money direct deposit. But basically, once I invest, I'm getting cash flow that comes to me. And I've been getting reports. I can ask questions if I want, but for the most part, like I'm not really doing much. And that's what a passive investor is, right? I'm having somebody else do the work, and
Mhm.
now the money is coming back to me.
And that's what you are really covering all the bases. I'm sitting here ready to be like, how can I be down? Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
One of my questions was going to be, is there like a prerequisite? Do you have to like examine a person and see if they're even positioned to become a part of this program? Or can someone, for example, win the lottery and walk up to you and say, hey, here I am?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that the governing body, it's called the Securities and Exchange Commission or the SEC. Or if you're a sports fan, the Southeastern Conference, right? The SEC, it's a different SEC. But
Mhm.
basically, they say there's a couple classifications. So most real estate deals, if someone is what's called just a standard investor or a sophisticated investor, they can invest in real estate type deals. Now, there's typically a lot of minimums for groups like ours, or and there are many groups. I'm not just promoting ours. So I'm just basically talking about investing generally.
Mhm.
Typically, the minimums are around 50 or $100,000. Now, there are ways to invest. You say, well, I don't have 50,000, I have 100,000. People do crowdfunding, they do other types of investments, and there's some challenges with that because there's extra fees in there. But there are ways to get in these deals without actually being high net worth.
So you
Um,
can become a collector, but I want to sign up. I got to get this book, Fire Yourself. And right now we have to take a station break. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we have more questions. You don't want to miss it. I'm not going to miss it. I'll be right here when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, go nowhere.
When I see a new broadcast from the Southside Unicorn, I can't wait to listen to it. You just never know what he's going to say. You are listening to the Southside Unicorn Show, hosted by my friend, Ken White. He'll be back after these messages.
Hey, it's your boy Ken White, and we are back with Bronson Hill. Bronson Hill is putting us, as we used to say on the south side of Chicago, he's putting us on tip. We're learning some things today if you've been paying attention. But as we get back to Mr. Bronson Hill, let me give you some stats that might whet your appetite to get more involved in firing yourself. I was wondering, as you do show prep, what is the difference between an employer or correction, an employee and an investor. Who makes the most money? Does an employee make more money or does an investor make more money? Well, I went over to the National Library of Medicine and the Social Security Administration and things like that to do some quick research. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what I found. The lifetime earnings of the average U.S. citizen over 50 years of age from age 20 to 69 vary substantially, depending on the various factors we will cover in this article, but we're not going to cover that article. I'm going to cut to the chase. The chase is that the earnings over a lifetime, and that's a social issue that we might want to talk about at another time. But for men, the average earning over your entire lifetime is going to be $1.8 million, 1,850,000. For women, that's going to be $1,100,000, $200. Basically, under $2 million is what you can hope to earn every morning you get up for almost 40 years. Mr. Hill, you have amassed over $45 million in some of your ventures. How long did it take for you to make that 45 million?
So, well, it's interesting, and I love the stats you brought up because it is important to think differently if you want different results. And again, you're crazy if you are in the room with people. It's whoever you're around. If you're around people that are all my parents are both teachers, my grandmother's a teacher, everybody's a teacher. So it's like this idea of a safe, secure job. And if people haven't read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, it talks about this, right? Like having a different approach. And so I think that really for most people. I just think really looking at things in a different level and really investing in yourself. So when you choose to become an investor, um, you're looking at a different path. So when it says that I've raised $45 million, that's not money that I just have gotten for myself. It's actually money I've raised from investors. So we talked about passive investing. Well, I didn't have, if you have more money than you have time, somebody listening is a doctor, they're an attorney, they're a lawyer, they own a business. If you have over $1 million, well, being maybe 500,000 or a million, then you have a good option to become a passive investor. If not, you could be an active investor, right? So what I did, I just went to people and saying, hey, you have money, why don't you invest in what we're doing? And so I basically got a piece of the upside. So maybe it's 1 or 2% or 5 or 10, whatever the amount is of that on the way up. So it really helped me to grow my wealth because I was really about helping other people with their wealth. So if somebody's listening to this and they don't have money, you can do it. You can basically learn to grow by helping other people that have a money problem. It's not like they don't have money, but they have money. And it's like, hey, how can I use this money that way I don't have to deal with the stock market volatility? That's the big one for a lot of people is the stock market volatility and there's really no income there and put it in things like real estate, which everybody knows they should be doing real estate, right? Everybody, if you came to friends and family, say, well, I know I should be doing this, but they just don't quite have the direction and know how to do that. So I think that really, everything sounds weird until you know somebody who's done it or you've done it yourself. So we do it in these larger deals called syndication, which just means we pool together different people. I did 4 single family houses with a family member, and then our next deal was a 225 unit apartment building. You say, well, how did you go from single family to 225 unit? Well, the biggest thing is there was a team, right? So I had a partner who had 15 years of experience managing these properties. I raised a little bit of money for this deal. I raised $100,000 from one investor. And now I have some experience on the management side, right? So sometimes these things aren't always just, I went from here to here. It sounds crazy, but it's like, it's one little thing. And this involves really getting around people that are at the next level that are doing it, that you admire, that are I promise if you go in rooms that you feel a little bit uncomfortable because everybody's wealthy and you just are there and you're curious and you ask questions and you're just kind of open, you will learn so much. And they will just, even their afterthoughts will teach, oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that.
That's happening right now.
That's
I
it.
mean, even right now, this is a living example of what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
let me run this vision I have in my head, and tell me if that actually can dovetail with your process. I envision someone who's a real go-getter. They don't have a lot of capital, but they got a lot of drive. And so at work, whether they're a nurse or whether they're at a school or even at McDonald's. But I envision this person making contact with, say, 20 of their friends, inviting them over to the house and showing them your program and perhaps pooling their monies together and then someone from your group making contact with that group. Is that a vision that's reality or
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how things work. I think that for me, I started a meetup in Southern California when I didn't have any. It was a multifamily meetup about apartment investing when I didn't have any apartments that I invested in, right? So, and there's a difference between being an expert and being a leader, right? An expert is they can know the content, they know stuff over time. I think I've become an expert in the space, but and then when I started, I didn't know. I was just the guy in the front of the room asking the dumb questions, right? We'd bring in experts and we'd ask.
There's no such thing as a dumb question.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. So then the guy who actually invested in me that 100K that I mentioned, he just simply saw me at the front of the room and said, "Hey, I'd do one of your deals." Right? He literally said that to me. And I was like, "Are you talking to me? Are you like," but again, he saw me as that because I was a person organized. So if you want to be in a space and you want to grow your wealth, if you can just be in there and start learning and adding, questions and adding value and things like that, like things start to present themselves. And so I think there's no like, hey, you do this and this and this, and all of a sudden you're there. But yeah, I think gathering people that you care about and you like, maybe do a book club together, maybe start going to, there's local meetups. If you search online or on a website called meetup.com, almost every city of the country has real estate or other types of meetups. And just by being there, you're going to meet amazing people that are doing all different things. And if you just are curious and you're open, I think that's one of the biggest things, no matter what route you pursue within real estate or investing or wealth, if you just go to meetings and you meet new people and you ask questions and you're curious, doors will open for you, right? But it's again, if somebody
they
has
they can't open for you if you're not there. They won't
exactly.
open if you don't knock, right?
That's it. That's it. Because I mean, it really, if you look at two people, somebody say, "Well, I'm not a big strategist, and I don't have all these things." And I'll tell you what: if you take one person that's a great strategist, has the best ideas, or the smartest person, but they just kind of sit on those ideas. Versus somebody who doesn't really know, but they just kind of show up and have an open mind, ask questions, and keep kind of making changes. The person who takes the action will just destroy the other person. Because I mean, and not as a competition, but just in the sense of they will have way more results because they're the one taking action. So I've seen people that are really not very smart, honestly, just not very bright, but they're multi millionaires just simply because they kept showing up, they kept taking action, they kept learning.
Well, to capitalize on that, I knew a gentleman many years ago, and I'm gonna mimic him out of love and respect. I miss him a lot, but he told me one time, and I think he was worth about $5 or $6 million, and he said, Kenny, I never made it out the eighth grade, but I understood that hard work would get it done.
Yeah.
That's what he told me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. So about your book, Fire Yourself, are people they're supposed to get the book, and inside the book will it help them to mimic what you have done, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the book Fire Yourself was really written. I've had now over 2,500 conversations with high net worth investors. They're people that are, on average worth over $2 million. And this is more of a guide for people that have money that are like, hey, I want to figure out how to do this. I've only done stocks, I've done bonds, I've done other things. So it's kind of for people that it's really good for everybody, but it's primarily designed for somebody who's more wealthy. But if somebody doesn't have wealth, it's really great because you'll hear my story in there about how I did it, how I grew, how I had some really setbacks. So I lost $70,000 in one day on an options trading strategy, right? When my net worth was about 200K. So that was a lot of money in one day to lose, right? It was a
Oh
bad day.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so I think there's a very honest story of, my background was in medical device sales. I did that for 10 years. I was paid well, but I didn't really, there's a difference between being high income and being high net worth, right? And so I wanted to transition to have a higher net worth. And
I
so
like the way you talk. You got a language all of your own, but I'm getting you. How much or what? Wow. Could you say that again? Just one more
yeah.
time. Let me hear you say it.
Yeah, so there's a difference between high income and high net worth. High income is I make money, I make good money. I was making, multiple six-figure job. But high net worth is you have a net worth like your friend of, 4, 5, $6 million, right? High net worth is different. And there are a lot of people that make lots of money, a lot of doctors, especially other professionals, but they spend lots of money, right? So if you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
way, and even if you're an entrepreneur, you're good at making money, you have to learn about passive income and investing so that you can have your money make money. Otherwise, you're just a slave to it. You're just like everybody else. It's just you make more and spend more than other people.
Exactly. And if you're spending as much as you make or even more than you make, you're gonna go broke at some point.
Yeah.
We're about to have to take a station break, but I just want to throw a few pearls out there on top of what my brother Bronson Hill is putting out there, ladies and gentlemen. There's a gentleman named Benjamin Graham. I'm probably sure you're familiar with him. And here's what he says about what the topic about what we're talking about. He says successful investment is about managing risk, not avoiding it. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after these messages.
When I see a new broadcast from the Southside Unicorn, I can't wait to listen to it. You just never know what he's going to say.
You are listening to the Southside Unicorn Show, hosted by my friend, Ken White. He'll be back after these messages.
Hey, it's your boy Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show, and we are into the third segment. This goes really fast. I wish I could sit around Mr. Hill all day and just let him open his mouth. You know, on this show, the Southside Unicorn Show, I open my mouth. But there are times when you really just need to sit down, shut up, and listen. This is one of those times. Mr. Bronson Hill, thank you for being on the show. And I understand you're working on a second book called Rich Brain.
Yeah, so yeah, this has been a blast, man. I'm really enjoying this. Rich Brain, it really came from having all these conversations with high net worth investors. And I was actually on an Uber, and I had a conversation where an investor was sending funds over or something. So this Uber driver overheard, she was a woman in her 30s. And this was, I was in Dallas, Texas on the trip. And she asked after, she said, how do I learn about money? How do I become wealthy? And just kind of asking some of those questions. And I didn't quite know what to tell her. I was like, I don't really think of the right thing. But I've realized in all these conversations, there are specific habits around mindset. There's a lot of people that are wealthy and they really look at money very differently. They have a high sense of what I call wealth worthiness, right? A lot of times, about 90% of people have self-sabotaging behaviors. So, and I can get into that. Like, if I'm a single guy and I show up to a party and there's a beautiful woman there, I want to have a conversation. But my self-talk is negative, and I'm like, oh, I'm no good. She's never going to like me. I have nothing to offer. How's that conversation going to go? Like, it probably won't even happen. If it does, it's not going to be good.
There's
But if
no vibe there. There's just no
no,
vibe.
well,
Yeah.
because you're not bringing it from the internal side. So, but when I show up, it also works with wealth. If I show up and I'm like, I've got something to offer and I've got something here and I believe I'm worthy of having wealth, whatever, I can show up in rooms and I show up a different way. So there's this work around mindset. A lot of people think it's weird to talk into the mirror and say things to yourself or to have written goals or things like this. But almost every single person that has a net worth of more than 10 million has some sort of mindset practice in their life. So this book, Rich Brain, is just how do I reprogram my brain? How do I get to a place where I show up and then I see the opportunity? I give a specific example of how that happened to me. I had a business deal that I would have passed on. It was about a 5x our business. But because I had been doing this work, I showed up and I was able to see it and I started to move towards it. And it actually became something that became an opportunity for us. So I think that, again, just being able to see it for yourself. It's great to know that someone can become wealthy, but to know that I can become wealthy, I can show up and I have something to offer. Even if I don't have the money, I can actually show up and I can basically be that person that's creating that in my heart first.
Exactly. And that's something I learned as a young brother growing up on the south side of Chicago. You don't always get to go to the college, but ladies and gentlemen, if you can find some way to make yourself a skill or something that you can offer to the world, you're going to make some money. But then after making that money, as we've been taught by Mr. Hill, what are you going to do with it? Are you on your way to Las Vegas so you can live the high life, or are you going to save and invest and do as Mr. Bronson Hill has done?
Yeah, well, we have choices, right? We have choices to learn. Obviously, we get the lesson when we get it. So if somebody's listening to this and be like, "Yeah, I want to do this. How do I do it?" Well, it involves going to meetings, going to conferences, reading books, making the decision. Like I made a decision. I want to leave my job, my good corporate job in 3 years. And I was able to do it. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just had something investing in real estate and I just did everything I could. And then all of a sudden, like that's how you get lucky, right? Like a door opens and all of a sudden you're there. So I think just being willing to make a decision, being willing to put the time in, and then being flexible and open that it may go a little different than you want, probably very different than you want, but being willing to continue to move forward and learn, I think is a great way to go forward.
And I got a question for you. Okay, you were in medical sales and you had a secure income basically because you had a job. But there's this, and I'm imagining this. There's that middle ground from where you're starting to let go because of your mindset changing, because of the environment. You're starting to let go of this employee type of thing, and you're sliding into the investor world. Can you share a memory with us of when you actually began to say, "This is my new life. I don't have to worry about quote unquote working anymore." When did that happen, and how did that go?
Well, I think honestly, it was really hard because I had this great job. I was making really good money, over $200,000 a year, and I wasn't
Oh,
working too. I was doing medical. It was a great job, right? So my
that's
whole
top
family,
15%.
What's that? Yeah, yeah,
You're in the
exactly.
top 15%.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. But what happened? And so again, I had really done well there. But what had happened is, I just went to friends and family. I was like, well, I want to leave my job because I was actually doing better in the real estate side. So I mean, it was at the time it was going really, everything was great. Real estate was really hot. Real estate's changed a little bit since then, but it was just super hot. So I was like, well, I'm doing better even over on the real estate side, and I want to leave. But my friends and family were all like, why would you ever leave your great job? No, it became the golden handcuffs, right? Why would you ever do that? And so it
Golden
wasn't.
handcuffs.
Golden handcuffs, right? And so when I got in a room with other entrepreneurs, I had a group I was a part of, and these guys were all super wealthy and done it for a long time in a business of a certain size. And I told them what I wanted to do and where I was and how I was doing in my business. They said, well, you should pretty much leave your medical sales job as soon as you can. And if it doesn't work, you could always go back to medical sales. And that kind of reframed it for me. Because I kind of had this like, oh no, I don't know. Because this is like, this is unknown land, right? I always thought I got to work hard, whatever. Well, is there a way that I could do this? And so when I actually left, it was great and kind of terrifying a little bit, but it's been about 4 years and it's been a real ride. Been a lot of fun, challenges, of course, but also a lot of good stuff as well.
Outstanding. And I have a few witticisms about investment. The next one's going to come from the great Benjamin Franklin. And he said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. I think we just invested some really good time in this last 30 minutes. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. Bronson Hill, for coming on the show. How do people get in touch with you? What are your parting words that you'd like to leave with the audience?
Yeah, it's been really great, Ken. Really appreciate you having me. I've got a free gift for your audience. It's about inflation. So a lot of people talk that, inflation, the pain at the pump, going to the store, there's pain and all that. There's a book, a guide I wrote. It's about 30 pages. It's called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage, right? So it's how do you actually, on the side of being an investor, owning real estate, using debt, even precious metals, some stuff people haven't heard. So this is the guide right here. If you text the word inflation to the number 33777. So you text the word inflation to 33777. We'll send that to you. You also hear about our upcoming deals and some of the stuff we're working on.
Wow. So not only have you just imparted a wealth of knowledge on us, you're giving us gifts. We actually got, wow. Now you remind me of Oprah, you get a car and
You
you
get a
get a
car.
car.
You get a car. I wish it was a car, but hopefully people will say, hey, I got a car out of listening to this, right? I made it.
Well, it's sort of a car. I mean, you put the gas in the car and. So that's pretty cool. I am so glad to have met you, sir. And firing yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, in the immortal words of President Donald J. Trump, you're fired.
I love it. I love it, Ken.
So, I don't want to go. I'm stuck to you like Velcro because, you can hang around people who have like tidbit knowledge and all this stuff. They could go on Jeopardy and answer every question, but a lot of good that's going to do you, right? But you, Mr. Bronson Hill, you have sat here and set minds on fire. People are already thinking, I got to get that book. How can I be down? I'm sick and tired of this job. I want a Bentley. So, you put their minds on track to doing that. And I want to thank you for being on the Southside Unicorn Show.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Ken. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I'll part with my signature close. Hey, listen to me. There's no place I'd rather be. There's nothing more I'd rather do than being right here doing this show for you. I'm Ken White with Mr. Bronson Hill, and we are out.